Oh, hey, I'm Kev Kermusker, and welcome to Power Oversteer. And in today's episode, we're reviewing the penultimate round of the 2013 FIA Formula One World Championship season. The United States Grand Prix held at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. And I just woke up from watching the race, so I think I watched. There was a lap. There was a. I can't remember much, but I did watch it. Actually, now that there was a race, it wasn't very interesting. In fact, it was probably one of the worst Grand Prix in quite a long time. It kind of reminded me of the refueling era of the early thousands, where there was not much on-track action, and even off-track, some of the strategy was quite straightforward as well. But the most action that weekend was actually off-track, really, with the driver moves before the race happened, and there were no Stensons. How can you have no Stensons, Pirelli, after last year? Let down, let down. Everything was a letdown in that race, unfortunately, but we do have to cover it, and we are going to start with the race recap. So, the race recap for the United States Grand Prix. And firstly, of course, we start with qualifying. And Sebastian Vettel grabbed pole from Marco by a tenth of a second. But the Australian made a Horlicks of the last set on his fastest lap. He lost 4 tenths to his next fastest lap. So if he had that 4 tenths, he probably would have comfortably got pole. But Vettel did put it on that second half of the lap as well. He really did lose time to the Australian in the first 2 sectors. In third was Roman Grosjean. His lows continues great form, and Nico Hulkenberg in fourth in the Sauber. How has that man not got a drive for next season? Lewis Hamilton was fifth in his Mercedes, much happier with the car, with his new tub, with his new chassis. I never say that right. But yeah, from the cracked one he had from the previous few races, been replaced. Fernando Alonso is sixth in his Ferrari. Sergio Perez seventh in his McLaren. Very good qualifying from him. Heikki Kovalainen on his return to a race seat is in 8th for Lotus. Brilliant job from the Finn after being dumped in that car at the very last moment. 9th was Bottas in the Williams. He was set to all weekend. He was even faster than Q1 in qualifying. Gutierrez was in 10th in the other Sauber, so good qualifying from Gutierrez, but he was given a penalty. In 11th was Ricciardo in his Toro Rosso. Di Resta was 12th, Button 13th. Rosberg 14th, Massa down to 15th in his Ferrari. So shocking from Button and Massa, but Button also had a good penalty for 3 places. In 16th was John Vergne, 17th Adrian Setter on the Force Indy, not doing his chances of getting a drive next season very good at all. And 18th was Maldonado, not on the same page as his teammate all weekend. In 19th, best of the newer teams, Guido van der Garde continues great form ahead of Bianchi, Pick, and Max Chilton was last. So that is the qualifying order. Let's go into the race. So at the start of the race, again Webber lost a couple of sessions, not off the line, but in turn 1 he was on the inside of the corner and kind of boxed himself in, while the guys on the outside had much better run in the turn and could get around him, such as Grosjean and Hamilton. Behind, he also boxed in Alonso, who's on the inside, and so Perez could go around his outside. And obviously this happened to Kovalainen, who was behind Perez, and he dropped from 8th down to 12th on the first lap. But then down the back straight, everyone was wheel to wheel, side by side, apart from Maldonado and Sutil. They touched towards Sutil, went into the barrier, and the safety car came out, and Sutil was surprisingly only retirement of the race on that first lap, and he was asking for Maldonado, who was from a different planet according to him, to have a little safety zone around him so no one can get near him. And yeah, not very happy German after the race. Also, Maldonado damaged his front ring in that first corner on the back of Felipe Massa's car. It was a really gentle touch, but it was enough to damage his front ring. And Chilton and Pitt got into it at the back of the field, and Chilton got a drive-through penalty. So as I said, the safety car came up, and during that safety car period, Esteban Gutierrez had to pit for a puncture from his medium, so he went onto the harder tyres in his Sauber, and he's right at the back of the field. After the safety car came in, it was kind of a line astern, really, not move is happening. Chilton took his drive through penalty for that first corner incident with Pick, and Gutierrez was DRS in the newer teams such as Bianchi on lap 6. That 7th, we saw Maldonado pit for a new front ring for that damaged front ring, and then on lap 13, Webber DRS Hamilton down the back straight for 3rd after being behind Hamilton for quite a few laps, and Mercedes driver was mysteriously losing quite a lot of pace in his car. Really didn't manage his race pace at all, Hamilton. In 5th, on that 15, we saw the fastest lap by Vettel, and then on 16 he did the fastest lap again, really putting out a gap at the front. Now 17 we saw Kovalainen pit, and the first of the legitimate stoppers for the harder tyres, and he came out ahead of Bianchi in 16th. Yeah, in 16th. Just get the goal. There we go. I can properly see now. And then we saw Rosberg DRS Ricciardo for 10th down the back straight, while Vettel did another fastest lap, and he was waddling his radio to save the tyres a bit as well by Rocky. So Rosberg getting into the points in his Mercedes. So around the 3rd distance mark, we had Vettel leading Grosjean, then Webber, Hamilton, Hulkenberg doing a very good job in 5th, Perez, Alonso, Bottas, De Resta, and Rosberg, Ricciardo, Massa, Button, Verne, Gutierrez, Kovalainen, Bianchi, Van der Garde, Pick, Maldonado, and Chilton. And Chilton quite adrift at the back after his drive-through penalty. On lap 20, we saw Button pit for hard as well, and after a 3.6 second stop, he came out in 16th between Kovalainen and Picoso, or behind Kovalainen. Picoso pitted and came out in last in his Caterham. And then there's kind of all of the pit stops. So we saw Massa come in the next lap, and he came out in 15th ahead of Button, Van der Garde. So Pitt came out ahead of Chilton and Pick, and Chilton actually came in for medium strangely and came out in last, of course. Then we saw Perez come in for hards, De Resta, Rosberg, Ricciardo on the next lap, and we saw Kovalainen actually jump these guys in the pit stop phase. So great job from Kovalainen on taking advantage of his newer tyres. Bianchi also pitted and came out at the front of the newer teams just ahead of Van der Garde. We also saw Bottas pit on lap 23, and he came out in 10th, and it was a lovely gap, ahead of Kovalainen, or gap there between Kovalainen and Perez there. So he slotted in nicely into that. Lap 25 we saw Gutierrez, DRS, Verne for 7th, as they had not pitted yet. They started, of course, Gutierrez switched onto the hard tyres, Verne started on them. We also saw Hamilton pit for hards, and after 3 seconds stop came out in 5th ahead of Gutierrez. Then we saw Perez, DRS, Verne, and down the back straight for 8th, and then we saw Alonso pit for hards after a 2.6 second stop. He came out in 7th ahead of Perez, so he actually made that work for him, for Alonso and Ferrari. Then on that 27, we saw Vettel finally pit after a 2.9 second stop and came out in 3rd. Hulk also pit for hards, and after 3 seconds stop came out in 5th behind Hamilton. And we also saw Verne pit for his mediums, so quite early pitting from the mediums, but we're seeing guys going halfway through the race from the start on these though, and he came out in 16th. And then we also saw Chilton pit for hard, strangely, so that was a very weird stint there for Chilton, and he came out in last. Then we saw Webber pit from 2nd a couple of laps later, and after a new world record, it seems, 2.3 second stop, came out in 3rd. And we saw Alonso pass Gutierrez in turn 2 after setting up in turn 1 by going wide and then taking the undercut there with Gutierrez not quite having the grip. Then in the second half of the race, Grosjean pitted from the lead on lap 29, and after a 2.8 second stop came out in 2nd ahead of Webber. De Resta also DRS Kovalainen down the back straight in 10th, and Kovalainen started to really struggle with a front ring problem, it turned out, and Vettel did a fast lap of the race, taking advantage of those newer tyres. Perez on lap 30, DRS Gutierrez, his fellow countryman, for 7th down the pitch straight after Gutierrez going a bit too deep into turn 19 and really costing time for turn 20, the last corner. And when you saw Rosberg DRS Kovalainen down the back straight forward, that was Kovalainen really slipping down, and he eventually pitted for a new wing on lap 31, and after 15.2 seconds stop agonised from him, came out in 17th behind Maldonado but ahead of Bianchi, and Chilton was the only guy lap down at this stage. Rebos did the fastest out of the race and now right behind Grosjean, just a second behind him. But he did this with going fast and dropping back, going fast and drawing back, because Red Bull had worse tyre wear than those, so he's really looking after those tyres. Rosberg, DRS, the rest of 10th down the back straight for lap 33. Then on lap 34 we saw Bottas, DRS, Gutierrez there, but Gutierrez got him back as Bottas went a bit too deep into turn 11, or turn 12 even. And then on lap 35 Bottas complete the move past Gutierrez out of turn 2, wheel to wheel actually into turn 2, and then into turn 3 he had the corner and he stayed ahead of Gutierrez. He was on his worn tyres but pitted on the next lap for mediums, and after 3.9 second stop came out in 15th, so that strategy for Sauber didn't quite work for Gutierrez. Weber did the fast lap of the race with a 141.683 on that 37. The Massa pitted for mediums, he couldn't make the one stop work, just like Abu Dhabi, and after 3.1 second stop came out in 16th ahead of Kovalainen. So around 2/3 distance here we had Vettel leading ahead of Grosjean and Weber and Hamilton, quite a few seconds back from the battle for second, over about 12 seconds back, with Hulk and Alonso right behind it, and 5 seconds back from Alonso to Perez. Bottas 15 seconds behind Perez in 8th, with Rosberg just 5 seconds back behind him in 9th, and he really cut that gap from 15 seconds down since he got past the rest in those around 6 laps, so he's gaining over a second and a half on Bottas at that point. And then we saw another 5 seconds back to the rest in 10th, and Ricciardo right on the Force Injuries tail. Bottas 3 seconds back in 12th, another 3 seconds to Vernon 13th, and Gutierrez on those new medium tyres. Maldonado was about 6 seconds back in 15th, with Massa 5 seconds back of him in 16th, and then Kovalainen just 2 seconds back of Massa. Bianchi, best of the new teams, just 2 seconds ahead of Van der Garde. The race-long battle between the two, between the Caterham and the Marussia. Then we had Pick 5 seconds behind Van der Garde, and Chilton was 40 odd seconds behind Pick, and Stone dead last. And then Vettel did the fast lap on lap 40 to build the gap again over the battle for second. Lap 44, Ricciardo, DRS, the rest are down the pit straight for 10th, and the rest is really starting to lose the tyres, it seems. At 45, Alonso passed Hulkenberg in turn 2 for 5th after doing the switch back into turn 1, going a bit wide and getting on power early. Then on that 46, we saw that Tech was reporting that Kerr's problem for Heikki Kovalainen, not the Lotus debut would have wanted in the race at least, and Webber did the fastest lap after dropping back. He's getting up to speed again. Massa, DRS, Maldonado for 15th down the back straight. Then that 49 we saw De Resta have to pit for mediums from 11th, and after 3.9 second stop came out in 17th behind Maldonado. That 50 we saw Kovalainen, DRS, Maldonado down the front straight for 15th. That 54 Vettel did the fastest lap of the race and into the 139s for the first time. And that 55 Button go round the outside of Ricciardo in turn 1. Ricciardo defended heavily, Button had the traction and the tyres, it seems, out of the corner to go just round his outside for the final point. And in the last lap we saw Hulk try and DRS Alonso down the front straight, but Alonso did that old switchback move to stay ahead of him in the battle for 5th, and Gutierrez and Fern had a bit of a silly collision in that 13. I think it was Gutierrez kind of defending on the outside, Vern on the inside, they just touched wheels, and it was Vern who was ahead and Gutierrez spun. Actually no, Vern was on the outside, Gutierrez was on the inside I think, and then they touched wheels and Gutierrez just spun to the outside. And after the race, Vern got a 20-second penalty because the stewards believe he caused that collision. So in the end, after all of that, it was Sebastian Vettel winning in his Red Bull by just 6 seconds from Grosjean, as he really had to look after the tyres in that final few laps, and he did the fast lap with 139.856, the only guy in the 39s in the race. Webber was a couple of seconds behind Grosjean, with Hamilton in quite a distant 4th, but good points for the Mercedes driver after quite a miserable run with that cracked tub, I will say, in the previous few races. Alonso held on to 5th just from Hulkenberg, with Perez in a very solid 7th, and Bottas got his first points in Formula 1 in 8th. Rosberg was 9th, and Button snatched the final point, as you heard from Ricciardo in the last few laps, for 10th. Ricardo disappointing in 11th, with Verne in 12th, being a bit closer to his teammate for once. Then Massa, Gutierrez, Kovalainen, DeResta, Maldonado, Bianchi best of the new team, just a couple seconds ahead of Van der Garde, Pick, Chilton, and Sittel was the only retirement. That's your race recap. Let's do the winners and losers now. So, the winners and losers for the United States Grand Prix, and as always, we start from back to front. So, Marussia, and 21st from out Chilton, 18th for Jules Bianchi, and Chilton's race was basically dictated by that opening lap incident with Charles Pitt. Getting that drive-through penalty, he was stranded at the back for most of the race. It didn't help that he had to pull over, probably the worst places, and that cost him some time. And also in the middle of that race, he went onto the medium after starting on the mediums. It was a bit of a strange strategy, so he had to go to the hards, and so yeah, that cost him time as well. But yeah, not the race that Max Chilton wanted. But Jules Bianchi, great job from him, you know, being best of the newer drivers, fighting with Van der Garde for virtually the whole race, and you know, he beat him by about 2 seconds at the line. So great job from Jules Bianchi, a bit like his early season form. For Caterham, a bit disappointing for them. Charles Pick in 20th and Guido Van der Garde in 19th. Van der Garde had no drinks bottle for like most of the race, I think, or almost the whole of the race, according to Ted's notebook. So he did well to survive that long without a drink, you know, in that race car. I'm sure it would have been quite hot in there. But yeah, he'll be disappointed that he didn't get ahead of Bianchi that race. But he outperformed Pick by about, I think, 5 seconds in the end at the line. So yeah, great job from Van der Garde again. And it does make me wonder why Caterham haven't signed him up for next season. He looks like he's been the better of the two drivers, at least in the second half of the season, once he's adapted to F1. So yeah, great job from Van der Garde even, and good job from Pick. But no, disappointed behind his rookie teammate once again. So the third worst team, it's got to be Force India in that race. Paul di Resta in 16th, and of course Sutter out on the first lap. And Sutter, you know, he blamed Maldonado, you know, so he's from a different planet, and he should have a kind of force field around him, where, or no-go area where people can't get near him around his car. But I think that was mostly Sutter's fault, that accident. He had more space to the right than Maldonado had to the left, and when they touched wheels, it looked like Sutter was going towards Maldonado. So I'll put most of the blame on Sutter, even though I would say it's a racing incident. Those things happened on the first lap. It's always hard to forget that, and or easy to forget that, should I say, for stewards, and they like dishing out the penalties, of course. But yeah, not the weekend that Sutter wanted. And with him and the rest of his drives on the line for next season, you know, there's a big hole in that midfield that needs to be filled, and there's lots of drivers contending for it now, with Perez, Maldonado, and Hulkenberg, of course, being the main suspects. And so yeah, Sutter, he's got to produce a drive in Brazil, and even in that might not be enough to keep his seat for next year. But he does seem to be a favourite of Force India, and so you never know with Sutil for the future. But yeah, he needs to perform big in Brazil, I think. Same with di Resta as well. After, you know, this Force India doesn't like the hard tyres, and you know, for di Resta it just showed itself again, and it forced di Resta to make a second stop near the end of the race. And you know, he's running in the lower top 10 for most of the race, so he's having a very good race, di Resta. But yeah, just that hard tyre, for some reason the Force India just doesn't like it. It's always been that problem throughout the year that Force India don't like that, or the Force India car doesn't like that tyre. And so yeah, made di Resta pit again, finished in 16th, and very disappointing for di Resta when he really needs to, you know, string along results. He had done that in India, done that in Abu Dhabi, you know, where Force India amazingly did that one stop. You know, he seemed to make that really work. But yeah, here the car just wasn't that good. So in Brazil, you know, they led the race last season with Hulkenberg, even though I know it was in the wet dry conditions. But you never know, it could be waning again, and di Resta's got to put himself in the place to get a result. He's already admitted that it's out of his hands really for a drive for next year. He's not in control of that. But if he puts in a good result in Brazil, I'm sure he'll put himself on some team shopping lists. And so we've got Toro Rosso next, 11th and 12th. Disappointing for Ricciardo, just dropping out the points at the last due to Jenson Button overtaking him with a few laps to go. But again, outperformed his teammate Verne all weekend. It was always in qualifying and in the race again. But Verne was a bit closer in the race, just 3 seconds behind him at the line. So that was encouraging for Verne. But really, it has been a disappointing second half of the season for Verne, especially since he got his best result in Canada. And then after Ricardo got announced at Red Bull Seat, he just took another dip in form again. I'm not sure if that just affected him mentally. But yeah, Verne, he's got to pick up his form next season. I'm sure he'll have his hands full with Danny Kvyat from what I've seen in Junior Formula. If he can adapt quickly to F1, then yeah, that could be very interesting with next season, and potentially his last season in F1 next season. We've seen how Toro also are with their drivers, but yeah, Verne, he's really got to step up his game, and Ricardo just confirming that Red Bull maybe made the right decision out of those two drivers, and it'd be interesting to see how he does next season alongside the four-time world champion. Then we've got Sauber, Gutierrez in 14th, and Hulkenberg, brilliant sit from him after brilliant fourth in qualifying. How does that guy not have a seat yet? But Hulkenberg, yeah, he's this prized piece in the shop window. He's the one that looks the most glamorous in the shop window. He's the one that people stare at and, you know, admire and think they're going to go, they inquire about him at the shop till, but no one has made an offer to buy him yet. It's incredible what's happening to Hulkenberg, and it may just show the state of Formula One and motorsport in general at the moment, where a guy this talented, or who's been putting in the results to back up the claims that we've been giving him over the years, but he still hasn't got a top seat. It's incredible, isn't it? But yeah, Hulkenberg, he did no wrong that weekend, really. He did a great job. Maybe just lost out to Alonso at the end, you know, Alonso with his experience, just trumping youth there. Great race car Alonso has, and it really got the best of Hulkenberg in that last lap, just finishing behind Alonso. For Gutierrez, on the other hand, very disappointing race for him. Of course, had that puncher at the start, went onto the hard tyres, kind of put him out of position, and as we saw in the race, starting on the primes and then going onto the soft tyre was perhaps not the best idea, or going onto the option tyre, sorry. So yeah, that didn't work out for Gutierrez, or didn't even work out for Werner as well with the prime option strategy. So yeah, for Gutierrez, very disappointing race, and that car definitely had pace. I'm sure he would have been right up there in the top 10 maybe in that car, because you know, with DRS, with the straight line speed of the Sauber, I'm sure he could have made some moves and get them done. And he had that clumsy collision with Verne, and Verne got the 20-second penalty at the end. I said he finished 12th, but he has actually dropped down to 16th, I believe, looking at this. Yeah, it's 16th he dropped down to. So he got the 20-second penalty for that lazy collision at the end. I think Gutierrez was on the inside, Verne was on the outside. They probably judged Verne was turning into Gutierrez and didn't leave him enough room to complete his move to go past those corners in turn 13 and 14. We didn't have enough of a look at it, but it just looked like a racing incident, and I wouldn't apportion blame to either driver really, because they did collapse touch wheels again, a bit like Sotil Maldonado earlier, and we didn't have the best angle, but it just looked like it was Verne was turning into a corner and Gutierrez was gonna turn in, just staying straight. So I probably would have put more of the blame on Verne, but again, a racing incident, and they didn't even apportion blame in the Sotil Maldonado incident, did they? So the stewards. So yeah, interesting that Verne got a penalty for that, while neither Sotil or Maldonado got a penalty for their collision. So yeah, interesting for Toro Rosso and Sauber. What about Williams? Maldonado, the aforementioned Maldonado in 17th. Yeah, race ruined in the first few laps, but at wing contact in the first corner with Massa. Had to pit forefront. Rayang was always at the back after that in 17th. The first car a lap down as well. He was just not hooked up all weekend. Disappointing race pace, disappointing qualifying, of course. He was on a different page to his teammate Bottas. And Bottas getting his first points in the Williams this season. Great just rewards for the rookie. And as I said, they took off the Candace exhaust, and you have to wonder why Williams didn't try this earlier. But it just made the car more drivable. And as I said, it would really show on the lap times around here, where you need to be confident in Sector 1, and then that carries on into Sector 2 of the long straights, and then of course Sector 3 as well, being especially confident in turn 19, in a very tricky corner. And if you're confident there and you can get the run out of turn 20 towards the line, you'll be finding dandy, as we saw in Webber's qualifying lap. But yeah, Bottas, great drive, brilliant drive from the long finish driver, and getting 4 points, I think 5 times in the Williams total in one race for the season, and kind of put him out of trouble in case Brazil is a crazy race in case Russia did score. So on this like Williams are kind of safe in 9th place there now with Bottas getting those points, and he controlled his pace brilliant in that second stint. I was very impressed with the hard tyres. Wasn't concerned at all about Rosberg catching up. He was saving the tyres, and then he could push a bit in those last 10 laps especially and build the gap up again, so or just maintain the gap. So yeah, brilliant drive from Bottas in the Williams. And then we've got let's talk about Ferrari. Massa in 13th, just not the weekend for him. Disappointing in qualifying. In the race, was stuck in traffic, especially stuck with Button, but then Button managed to save the tyres in the end, and Massa couldn't. He had trouble with the tyres again, and he's having this problem with tyre wear. He had that in Abu Dhabi. He couldn't make the one stop last, and that's probably why the team put him on the prime tyres on that last stint of the soft tyres that he wanted in Abu Dhabi. But yeah, just again Massa trouble with tyre wear, and there could be worrying for Williams next season. But of course the tyres always change with Prix, so you know it's a different ball game next season, especially with the turbos as well. But yeah, Massa disappointing weekend, but as I said, he's got his future confirmed, so I'm sure he's a bit happy as well about that. Alonso, brilliant driving, fifth, extracted all he could out of that car really. A great strategy from Ferrari. They left him out, I think, and for a few laps there in the middle of the race, and that managed to make him jump up a bit and get ahead of Perez, and so it just worked out for Alonso there in the middle part of the race, and they got him in position to attack Hulkenberg, and then Raleigh driver, as I said, veteran moves there on the last lap to let Hulkenberg come through and then just do what appears his favourite move, out of turn 1, getting the traction and passing the guy into turn 2. But yeah, great drive from Alonso once again, and runner up in the championship for the 3rd time in 4 years at Ferrari. I'm sure he's getting a bit sick of that now, but yeah, great drive from Alonso, and he took advantage of Sauber pitting Hulkenberg a bit early as well with the tyres going off there, and yeah, just attacked at the right moment in that last stint. And then after that, let's talk about Lotus. Let's talk about Aki Kovalainen. What a drive on his return to Formula 1, or return to a race seat. And he's going to be with Lotus in Brazil as well. But hopping into the car Thursday, Friday wasn't that bad, but then Saturday in qualifying especially, on the pace, 8th position in Q3, better than Raikkonen's done in some of the races in the second half of the season. And so yeah, brilliant job from Kovalainen in qualifying. He was doing a great job in the race, but Lotus have admitted it's their fault for picking Kovalainen a bit early, for making his strategy not work. But he did like a genius move at the time in the race, picking him early, because he jumped all those positions on those hard tyres, and then he just lost time with downforce. I think Aaron Permain said he lost like 20 points of downforce on his front wing, so that's very interesting to hear, because it didn't look that bad apparently. You're talking to Grab, nothing discernible at least to account for all of that downforce loss. But yeah, that was disappointing for Kovalainen. Great drive from him, and in Brazil, once he's got a bit used to the car, you never know what happens in Brazil. But Roman Grosjean, second best driver on the grid. Yes, I am saying that. He has been the second best driver in his last 5 races at least, and the hard work, and especially since he's become a father as well off track, he seems to be more settled down, seems to be a bit calmer in this second half of the season. He's kind of learned from the first half of the season where he's struggling just to stay out of incidents and perhaps a bit too timid. But now you can see in the second half of the season he's just matured as a Grand Prix driver, and it justifies second chances in F1 really, or is one of the cases for, because after last season, how many of you would have hired Grosjean? But Lotus stuck with him, and now they're paying dividends for sticking with him. And what a drive from Grosjean, equaling his best result in F1, due to equaling the second place he got in Canada last year. So he likes North America a bit, but brilliant drive from Grosjean, especially holding off Webber. But I'll talk about the Red Bull strategy behind Grosjean in a minute. But yeah, great from Grosjean, qualifying up there in 3rd. So he's got the qualifying pace. We knew all about his pace, but now he looks like he's got the racecraft with it, and it'd be great to see what happens next season. He could be the team leader, of course. They could go back to the Enstone team that they had with Alonso way back when the old Fabio Briatore reign Yeah, so Grosjean, great drive from him, and it'd be interesting if their money doesn't come through and they can't hire Olkenberg, if they do go back to that dynamic, as I said, because I don't see Perez or Maldonado as team leaders, especially Maldonado after this season with Williams, but I do see Perez as a very solid driver, perhaps not the equal of Grosjean at the moment. I believe Grosjean's matured much better than Perez, but it's kind of judged with the different cars they've got at their disposal at this season. But yeah, Grosjean could be the number one driver next season. I mean, he's got all the attention to him now with Raikkonen out for the rest of this season. I'm sure Lotus will treat Kovalainen well, but I'm sure they're gunning for Grosjean to maybe even get a win in Brazil with the way he's driving at the moment. So yeah, it'd be interesting if they go to that dynamic, especially if they have like Maldonado. You may be bringing in the money, but he's a very volatile driver. And with Perez, we've seen him be volatile in the past as well, but he seems to have blossomed in the second half of this season. But yeah, he's not. I don't believe he's quite as good as Grosjean. So you could see them lean more towards Grosjean next season. So it's very interesting dynamic there if the money doesn't come through as well. They could even hire someone like Sito, who has a bit of money behind him as well, and maybe experienced driver, maybe able to teach Grosjean a few things. But Grosjean could lead the team a bit better than Sito. And so yeah, that's a very interesting choice for the second seat. If you bring into play how well Grosjean has done and how he could lead the team next season. So, and they believe that the finances coming in Martin Brundle on Sky F1, the Quantum Sports figurehead, he's saying that the deal is done. It's going to be done this week, and then that investment will come, maybe even more investment than they were going to bring. So yeah, that'd be interesting to see if that deal ever does come through, a bit like the Russian deal with Sauber. For McLaren, let's go to McLaren now, and double points finish, good points finish for Button after that very poor qualifying, and made up 5 places, very weird to see. But Perez 7th, started 7th, finished 7th, very solid drive. He's outdriven Button in these last few races. I know Button's had his first corner incidents and problems, but Perez, he's just been a brilliant driver in these last few races, and it is a shame that McLaren are letting him go, but it was a case of Perez being against Magnussen this season instead of what we saw as against Button on track and against Magnussen and all the guys who were so impressed with him in the simulator. And it seems like Perez was right in a battle he was never going to win this season. Unfortunately, he's always going to be the stopgap driver until Magnussen came in and then Van der Dorn, and that's when maybe we will see Button go, because McLaren have got 2 very handy young drivers there. And if Magnussen it does very well, we could see him paired with Van der Dorn, and that could be the pairing for the next few years for McLaren. With just like the Hakkinen and Coulthard days, that could be a long pairing for McLaren if they both work out and if they both don't want to move along and other teams try and get them. But we did see this before with McLaren 20 years ago, in fact, with Michael Andretti. He came into the team, didn't help himself, that he didn't really relocate to Europe and was quite arrogant in his approach to F1, it seemed. But yeah, he got replaced near the end of the season after getting a podium in Italy in his last race. Everyone knew it was his last race. But he got replaced by little young Mika Hakkinen, and then he out-qualified Senna in his next race. So, the potential with Magnussen could go the Hakkinen route, and we all know what happened to Hakkinen after that. Or it could go his father's route, where young Magnussen, who came in as a replacement for Nigel Mansell, I think, in '95, made his debut in the middle of the season. And then he went to Stewart for a couple of years, and Jackie Stewart hyped him as the best driver since Senna. And his junior Formula record did indicate that, a bit like Kevin Magnussen's, his son. So, but it didn't work out for Jan. He only got a point in Canada in his last race in F1 before he got replaced by Jos Verstappen at the team, and he was sacked. But he's had a very successful career in the one, especially with the Corvettes in GT. So, yeah, it could go either way with Kevin Magnussen, and it's going to be a few years before we can judge whether it was a good choice for McLaren. But if it works out, you can't really blame them for dropping Perez. If it doesn't, you can blame them for dropping Perez. But you got to take your hats off for McLaren for just gambling with Magnussen, I believe. Because he's got a great personal owner from Button next season, and then, as I said, Button could be on his way, could retire. He's already hinted at that, of course. And Van der Dorn could come in to join him after his stint in GP2, it seems like, with Dams next season maybe. So yeah, I talked a bit more about McLaren than I probably should have. Let's talk about about Mercedes and Nico Rosberg. Yeah, the team just said that his race was dictated by that poor qualifying. You know, that's what happens when you qualify so low down in 12th. He got up to 9th in the end, and he did have very good pace. You know, almost equal with his teammate really from the time you could see in clear air. But yeah, again, he was just stuck in traffic, and then he got Bottased at the end with Bottas managing his tyres so well, and you know, Rosberg couldn't eat into his gap in those last 10 laps. But yeah, good drive from Rosberg. Just the poor qualifying let him down. So this was like a refueling race from the early thousands where you couldn't overtake easily. It was mainly DRS moves, and that's mainly when the tyres were a bit uneven in states, or if your car was significantly faster, say like Gutierrez did the Mauritius and Caterham. So yeah, good job from Rosberg just to get some points there. Hamilton in 4th. They replaced his cracked chassis from the last few races, and he seemed much happier with the car now. And you know, he got up there, he qualified up there in 5th, made it and finished in 4th. Seemed like a much happy camper, and he had no cars to really hide behind as well. He had loads of clean air, and that perhaps explains why he couldn't really make some moves, you know, in the earlier races with that cracked tub. No, we'll see. And the team were very happy with his tyre management, pace management. I wouldn't have been happy with that. He was all over the place, it seemed at times, especially in that first stint. And you know, he did say some remarks to the teams like, "Don't tell me all this information." And about 20 laps later, saying, "Why didn't you tell me all this information? Keep me informed." But you know, that's the guy that's in the heat of the moment. I do let drivers go with some of these comments here on Team Road, because they is in the heat of the moment. You all say stupid things sometimes, and when you take it back after the race, just like Maldonado did in qualifying, after when he accused Williams of sabotage on his car, and then you know, after the weekend said, yeah, that was perhaps the wrong choice. He was just angry from having a poor qualifying. Sometimes you do say stupid things, and once again Hamilton did that on team radio, and then kind of seems to have acknowledged it after the race that it was that, or later in the race, that it was about stupid thing to say. But yeah, much happier Hamilton, and you know, I do expect Mercedes to be batting for that podium in Brazil. You know, a place that Hamilton, you know, has quite a history with. And then we've got the big team, Red Bull, Webber in 3rd, Vettel in 1st. And Vettel, what can you say? 8 wins on the trot, breaking Michael Schumacher's record of consecutive wins in a season. Oh, Schumacher and the Sky, I can't remember the Sky, he got 7 wins in 52. He got a lot, but I can't remember if it was that many. But Sky did win 9 races right in the races he was entered for. There was the 1953 Indianapolis 500, where I think he and Ferrari did practice but weren't entered for the race. So yeah, Vettel, he can equal that record if he gets the win in Brazil, and he gets the single season record for most consecutive wins in a season already. And he could equal Schumacher's record of 13 wins in the season from 2004, if I remember correctly. And so yeah, brilliant job from Vettel. The only guy in the 39s in the race as well, 139.856 for the fastest lap. And, you know, he's going too fast at times. You know, Rocky had to calm him down a bit, and he did show at the end where he had to really manage the tyres and finished only 6 seconds ahead of Grosjean in the end. And then we've got Webber, and he was just stuck behind drivers all race. And he was stuck behind Hamilton in that first. Then when he was in clear air, he quickly got to the back of Grosjean. He was just stuck behind Grosjean for the second stint of that race. But Webber, I think Red Bull just mismanaged him behind Grosjean, because the Lotus had much better, you know, tyre wear, much better on their tyres. So they really should have attacked Grosjean early on when the state of the tyres were quite equal. Because when, as we saw when he got later in the race, you know, Webber had speed when he was in clear air. But when he got back behind Grosjean, he didn't have the gearing in his car to get past. He didn't have the straight line speed. And Grosjean's tyres were in a much better state, or a bit better state. And so Webber couldn't take advantage out the corners with traction, much like Alonso could, in that, especially in that turn 1. And so yeah, I think Red Bull just mismanaged Webber's strategy there of behind Grosjean. They really should have attacked him early on instead of in the middle part of the stint or later in the stint when the Lotus had a bit better tyres and had a bit better gearing as well. You know, Webber could have taken advantage of the Red Bull speed early on those tyres and then managed his speed in front of Grosjean, which would have been a bit easier, you know, with none of the turbulent air behind another car there. But yeah, as you saw, especially in those last 5 laps when he's really trying to attack Grosjean, he was just equal to Grosjean, because Grosjean could manage his pace in front of Webber, and you know, his tyres were in a much better state, and he could really manage the situation But earlier on, he perhaps couldn't have managed it with whatever hard charging on those tyres, especially with the Red Bull pace there in the early part. So, yeah, bit of a mistake from Red Bull there, I think, but double podium, you can't really complain about that if you're a team. And yeah, brilliant from Red Bull once again. And so that is the winners and losers. Let's go into of the race. So, of the race and driver of the race, there are quite a few candidates. Of course, you got Sebastian Vettel and Roman Grosjean. Vettel for winning once again in that Red Bull, and Grosjean being right up there in the Lotus, less than 10 seconds behind the winner in the end. Got Fernando Alonso fighting up to 5th, and Sergio Perez getting a very strong 7th in his McLaren. The race after, he's been told he's let go for next season. Of course, Bottas in the Williams as well for getting his first points in Formula 1, and maybe Button for salvaging a point in his McLaren up there in 10th, and maybe Bianchi as well for being best of the newer team drivers, because I didn't really expect Russia to be ahead of Caterham there, but he held off Van der Garde for most of the race and was only a couple seconds ahead of him at the end. But I think I've got to share this one between Bottas and Grosjean, because Grosjean being right up there in the Lotus, you have seen his form recently, the second best driver on the grid behind Vettel recently, and a very strong second place, equaling the second place he got at Canada last year. So he likes North America, it seems. And of course Bottas for getting his first points in that Williams, getting 4 points in that Williams. He was just hooked up all weekend, never put a foot wrong really, and really outclassed Maldonado. And you got to say, for next season, Williams are looking strong with Bottas and Massa leading the team. He's got a very good driver to learn from there, much better than Maldonado, who seems to be doing his talking off track rather than on it. Team of the race, well, we've got Lotus, because they got Grosjean up there, and they did very well with Kovalainen, just putting that car straight away, Kovalainen, and he was in the points until he had that front ring problem where you just lost downforce, lost quite a few points of downforce, and had to change it, unfortunately. Red Bull, of course, 1-3, it should have been a 1-2, but Webber could not get past Grosjean with the set of his gear in there. Maybe Sauber as well, Hulkenberg up there in 6th, even if Gutierrez didn't quite get it together with only finishing 14th, and McLaren looking very strong in 7th and 10th, getting a double points finish as well. And Williams, they sorted the car out by removing those Coanda exhausts. You got to wonder why they didn't do it earlier in the season, but they did get points with Bottas. And Maldonado was okay-ish in the race. He kind of messed it up on the first lap, sadly, but yeah, maybe Williams as well. But I think I'm going to give it to Lotus and Williams. I'm going to share it. Williams for, as I said, they really did get that drivability into the car by removing those Coanda exhausts, and I said it would show on the lap times here, because you need that confidence, especially in that first sector and the last sector as well, with those quite fast corners with the reverse turn 8 from Turkey and then the tricky turn 19 as well. And it showed with Bottas hooked up all weekend. I got to give it to Williams for producing a car that scored some solid points. 4 points, that's 3 more than they had ever scored previously in a race, and they've quadrupled, I think it is, or no, not quadrupled. What's the 5 one? 5 times their score in one race. So well done to Williams, and for Lotus for providing the car for Grosjean and Kovalainen. Q3 car there. Grosjean took advantage of it and really drove the perfect race there to finish second, and Kovalainen was unlucky not to score some points on his return to an F1 race car, and he was right there. He took advantage of the early pit stop, the changed tyres, and those laps really came into dividends after the other guys made their stops, and he got in there in the points. Unfortunately, he just had that front ring damage that cost him points in the end, but very solid drive from Kovalainen in his return. So team of the race shared between Lotus and Williams. Overtake of the race, and once again it was one of those races which was kind of commanded by DRS, and it's very hard to choose an overtake really, but I'm trying to look through hang on, I have to look through my race notes, son. I tried to look through my race notes here of overtakes that I do remember happening, and I think I might go to lap 44, if I can read that correctly, even with my glasses on. I'm quite half blind. But Ricardo DRSing. Oh no, that's DRSing De Resta down the pit straight for 10th. There was a move actually by Bottas. Hang on. No, that 34. I got my laps wrong. But on that 34, Bottas DRSing Gutierrez into turn 12. But Gutierrez retakes him on the undercut. And then Bottas got round him outside in turn 2. So I'm giving it to that move around the outside of turn 2. Great little battle between Bottas and Gutierrez there. Bottas really taken. It was quite a brave move around the outside of turn 2 because they were wheel to wheel. It's not like, say, when Alonso got past Gutierrez late in the, or early in the race where Gutierrez didn't really have the traction up that corner. Alonso was very smart to pull ahead of him into turn 2. But these were wheel to wheel on turn 2, and Bottas kept his foot in and kept the corner ahead of turn 3 and managed to take the place. So I was only going to give it to Bottas. It's been a very good weekend for him at America. But yeah, that is my review of the United States Grand Prix of 2013. An all-time classic in the worst races probably, but you know, we're going to Brazil now, season finale. That should be interesting, especially if some weather happens to turn up at the race weekend. But I hope you have enjoyed this. I'll be back, of course, with a preview of that Brazilian Grand Prix. So thanks for watching. So till then, cheerio.